Word nerd, wordsmith, wordy, wordless. Oxford Dictionary says a word is a single, distinct, meaningful element of speech or writing, used with others or sometimes alone. We say each one matters. No extra words is literature, minimalist style. And we're getting you right to the story. Shiny by Tina Taco. They were meeting me at school, Dad told her, so Grandma looked for her favorite shoes until she cried. Even if she'd found them, she could never miss what else had gone missing. The packs of poise lined along the top of the linen closet. A week's worth of housecoats, a week's worth of socks. Her heaviest sweaters crowded in her bottom dresser drawer, now boxed and labeled at the back of the garage. Even the Salvation Army mailer, free pickup 6 days a week. Sitting too long on the phone would not have helped. After dark, I plucked the silver tangle from the kitchen garbage, my stepmother's project from the night before, her gloved hands needling each strand until Grandma's hairbrush seemed new. Maybe that would have flicked something on, glanced across Grandma's mind. But the kitchen had scared Grandma for a while, and Kathleen making things shiny was not unusual. Measurements by Ingrid Jędrzejewski. This afternoon, after the movers had left and we were surveying the emptiness of the house we were about to fill, she brought the tape measure to me. I'd left it lying around. We'd been sizing up the living room, thinking about buying some new furniture, probably a bookcase. "Show me," she said. "Show me exactly, precisely, how long our love is." I didn't know what to say, so didn't say anything at first. "No, really," she said, grabbing my hand with an intensity that surprised me. She opened my fingers and placed the measuring tape in the center of my palm. "I want a number." "Okay," I said slowly. "Sure." The tape measure was one of those standard yellow plastic instruments. It had a nice heaviness about it. When I held it in my hand, I felt secure. She was so quiet, I wondered if she was holding her breath. I had to do something, so I began to pull on a little metal tab to extend the tape, thinking over my options. I pulled slowly. I felt that it would be bad form to pull it out too far and then have to draw it back. I looked at the metric ticks and the imperial graduations. At this particular moment, they seemed to signify nothing. What could I say to her in inches, in centimeters? Did length have any relevance at all? Surely something else, density, electric current, volume, would be a more appropriate unit with which to measure an emotional attachment. I was concerned that bringing all this up might lead to a discussion of even more hypothetical things, so in the end I measured out a rectangle on the floor, 100 by 44 centimeters. I was still in moving mode and had a roll of masking tape around my wrist, so I tore off 3 strips and marked out the space. Then I measured up the wall, 202 centimeters, and marked that too. When I was done, I nodded and let the measuring tape snap back into its plastic yellow shell. We stood back and looked at it. The space we talked about filling with furniture, now all measured and delineated. To me it looked substantial, bulky. I don't know what it looked like to her. She wasn't always a good judge of capacity. After a moment, she nodded slowly and said, "Okay." I couldn't read her feelings from her voice, but then I often find that difficult. I am hoping that soon we can go to the store and pick out something to fill that space. Something solid and oak. Something well-made and durable. Something with shelves. Maybe with cupboards. What more can I say? We need some places to store things. Hello there, welcome to No Extra Words, the Flash Fiction Podcast. My name is Chris Baker-Dersch. I'm your producer and editor. A Thanksgiving week episode. You know, we've been doing this show for a year and a half now, so we've cycled through all of the major holidays and things and figured out how we commemorate them in this audio storytelling format. And I think, based on my experience so far, Thanksgiving is the toughest. to convey in this flash fiction form. And I'm not really sure why. I think gratitude is important, and Thanksgiving is a holiday that I've always really liked, but it also comes with its complications. My family is blended as well, and I think, all the family together without the sort of buffer that Christmas is and those kinds of holidays provide is always a little bit interesting. And so I thought long and hard about the name for this episode, but I really couldn't get past that word shiny, because it has such a conveyance to it of something that's really pretty and really sparkly and really lovely, but that doesn't always penetrate the layers. Shiny is a surface action, and you don't always know when things are shiny exactly what's going on beneath. And I think when we come together for those family holidays, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of what things look like versus what things actually are. And so I thought it might be interesting to explore that topic for Thanksgiving week and to kind of delve into relationships a little bit. And Tina Taco's story was a great way to start. Tina, of course, is a regular contributor. She's been around with us before, including earlier this month. And I love her. She really excels in those microfiction, short moment stories, especially the ones about family relationships. And Shiny is definitely all of that. And then we launch into Ingrid's story. Ingrid's story, I just kept thinking in my head the whole time I was trying to see what was happening from the other perspective. It's told very specifically from one half of this relationship, and I, in relationship in my own life, tend to live on the other half. I could completely and totally see myself being the person who hands over the tape measure and says, okay, measure out how much I mean to you. And when the narrator in the story is saying it looks like a big space to them, the space that gets laid out, I'm thinking 100 centimeters is not that long. But it's always nice to get into the head of a person who's from the other perspective. And that story is left very unfinished. We don't know exactly how these two people who have just embarked on a major thing living together make it through that first night, that first week, that first month, that first year. But we do know that they're speaking to each other in a different language. One of my alternate titles for this episode comes from that story, was A Good Judge of Capacity, because the narrator talks about the girlfriend being someone who's not always a good judge of capacity, and capacity can mean so much. One's capacity to do or to be something, which is going to lead us right into Dean Jean's story, which is coming up next, about a person's capacity to create something beautiful. And again, what things sound like, look like, feel like compared to what they actually are. So I'm going to get you to that. These are stories that have a little bit of bittersweetness to them, which is something we did last Thanksgiving as well. And I think it's important to not be too fluffy and shiny around the holidays. Shiny, did you hear me? I used that word. To have a little bit of grit and a little bit of reality, I think really helps us around a holiday. That said, I think this holiday also has a ton of beauty to it, and I really hope that you enjoy it for those of you who are celebrating this week here in the United States. The end of Thanksgiving weekend starts Advent, which is the coming of Christmas, and we're going to relive an old Christmas tradition on this show and put a new spin on it. So that will be coming your way next week. Have a great holiday, and I will see you then. Please enjoy Dean Jing's story, The Singer. The Singer by Dean Jean Feng. I shut the gate of my house and lock the door behind me. I take a tentative look at my watch. 7:30 a.m. I'm going to be late. But the nonchalance from 2 years of uneventful work keeps me from worrying. I hum a little song under my breath, one that I suddenly can't remember the name of. As I do so, I get distracted by this niggling annoyance, and my mind soon lazily drifts to possible lunch options for the day. I am presented with arrabbiata pasta, lasagna, and spaghetti bolognese by my thoughtful, enterprising mind. And then it shows me a snapshot of today's hideous work pile now sitting comfortably in my cramped office cubicle, which is more than enough to make my lips curl in distaste. Then I hear a voice, which snaps me out of my burgeoning random thoughts, a golden hand pulling me out of proverbial fluffy clouds. Thank God for that. I daydream too much. I am my own worst enemy. The last sentence is shouted entirely in my mum's voice, but in my brain I wince and shake my head. My ears perk up. Someone's nearby. But who is it? My eyebrows knit together in concentration. It sounds like a girl, but it doesn't sound like someone that I know. Oh, she's singing in what sounds like Tagalog. Why is she singing at this hour? What is she singing? This voice, steeped in bright youthfulness, floats towards my ears. It hovers like a pale, lingering spectre, too shy, perhaps, to present itself before my ears. But as the song reaches the climax, her voice soars, revealing an unrestrained joy that sears my heart sweetly. Her voice is a clear high soprano that takes to the brightest skies, skimming the surface of the empty silence. I am fascinated by the tonal quality of her voice. I know next to nothing about music theory or vocal range, but her voice envelops me in a warm embrace, a best friend's hug. It's been a while since I've heard anyone sing like that, or felt like that. My wearied heart, drowned in ennui, slowly opens its eyes. Such naive joy still exists in this world. Who is this person? I try to move my feet, but they involuntarily fail to obey me, and I stop again after another belated attempt. At this point, my mind interrupts by issuing a particularly important question. I live on the 3rd floor of this little apartment, and my usual habit has always been to take the stairs to save on time. Should I go down the stairs today? Thinking hard as this shining voice weaves its mysterious magic between my eardrums, I decide not to break this beautiful spell and embarrass anyone in the process. I immediately proceed to the lift. I want to continue listening to her. But what the hell are you doing that for? You're supposed to be heading for work. As I press the lift button, it emits a loud, perfunctory beep, which sticks out like a sore note cutting into the magic of the moment. The owner of the voice is startled and she stops singing. I resist the overwhelming urge to kick myself once more. Will she sing again? Will my efforts to listen to her singing be all in vain? These are the only thoughts running in my head as the lift doors close and starts its slow ascent. I bite my lips. When the lift doors open, a relieved smile beams on my face as the voice wafts around me in the corridor. She has started to sing again. The heavy fragrance of joy permeates the dull gray surroundings around me. I step out enraptured and listen once more. I take a closer step towards the stairs and glimpse a beautiful tanned arm with a slim wrist propping itself on the floor for support. Then something much more disturbing catches my eye. I see bruises that have blossomed over her arm and the tattered brown sleeve of her shirt. My heart swells with indignation, then wrenches even further after having witnessed the simple beauty of her voice. Who did this to her? Fueled by my sudden anger, my feet move themselves of their own accord. The soles of my trainers skid on the floor, making a squealing noise, and the voice abruptly cuts off. The girl gets to her feet. For the first time, I stare at this mysterious singer who has captured my heart with her voice. She is of nondescript appearance, somewhat haggard in appearance despite her youth. Her hair is tied in a messy bun. But I stare open-mouthed at the sight of her arms. They are full of bruises and cuts. Tiny, silvered cuts, some freshly inflicted, others healed over. For a moment, her bright eyes, terror glinting off those brown orbs, meet my own startled ones. Before I can utter a single word, she disappears down the stairs in a flash, like a fleeing rabbit hurtling down the rabbit hole. Her cheap slippers slap hurriedly against the stairs as she does so. I am left standing bereft in an empty sea of silence that obliterates the hanging notes of her lovely voice, stamping out the joy and innocence that I witnessed earlier. But the melody lingers, much like the remembrance of a bittersweet memory, in my ears. Thanks for listening to the No Extra Words podcast. For more information on today's stories and contributors, or to learn how to submit your own work, please visit us at noextrawords.wordpress.com. The best support you can give the show is to recommend us to your family and friends. See you next time.